Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Remember to use that promo code DNVR20 for first-time users to get 20% off, and DNVR25 for second-time users to get 25% off your entire purchase of that CBD-infused, deliciously rich, and potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I'm your host, Drew Creasman. I'm the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. With me, as always, is beat writer Patrick Lyons. And joining us, as has become our weekly custom, is, of course, the voice of the Colorado Rockies on AT&T SportsNet and the host of the Drew Goodman podcast. It's Drew Goodman. Rocking out.
Yeah, I got my coffee. I'll leave, we have different coffee sponsors, but I'll leave my mug up there with our logo, our pretty logo.
Appreciate that.
It's such a great logo too. That's something that if you slap that baby on a shirt, I mean, you're gonna sell a couple of those threads.
Well, certainly sell more than if I put my mug on that. Right?
Put the mug, or put your mug on that mug. I mean, you can sell your own mugs too while you're at it.
And then I'll just keep it in the confines of my own kitchen. Right.
I don't know. I feel like there's untapped potential in the Goodman's mug.
I don't know, but thank you. You're very flattering. I'll make you my marketing director. You will be a team of 1.5.
There you go. We'll rope in all the other Drews we can find.
That's right.
Well, on today's episode, we do want to get a little update on spring training in general, talk a little bit of prospects because it's prospect week here on DNVR. For those of you who are subscribed, you've been getting you've gotten one, but you're about to get a whole lot of prospect content. But unfortunately, we do have to talk goody about the most recent news. This literally happened within the hour of us hitting the record button for this conversation. Kyle Freeland comes out of a spring training game with an apparent injury. What's the latest on this? And just kind of what is your feeling and your takeaway from, it's as we're kind of talking about, this is the last thing that anybody associated with the Rockies wanted to hear.
Yeah, there's no question. The strength of this club, and we've talked quite a bit about it when we've been together, and I know you guys have pontificated about the fact that the strength of this Rockies team, as strange as it is, as it sounds, certainly around baseball, is their rotation. And one of their leaders, probably their most vocal leader, but certainly one of their best pitchers, is Kyle Freeland. And Kyle Freeland left today's spring training game with a strain in his left shoulder. And that's not looking at him walking off and saying this came from the club after he left. That was what was reported by the club to the media, that he left with a left shoulder strain. Now, you won't know the severity, for a couple of days. He will have an MRI. That goes without saying. He'll have an MRI. It is the last thing you want to hear. Unfortunately, people don't want to hear this either. Injuries are a part of sport. And I've said this many times, and you guys probably chuckle at it when you've heard me say this in the past, but I always say, there's not 2 guarantees in life. There are 3: death, taxes, and pitchers get hurt. And the Rockies have been very fortunate with that rotation by and large. John Gray's dealt with some injuries, but by and large, they have been pretty intact as starting rotations go. And you think back just to a couple of years ago when they tied the Dodgers after 162, that 2018 rotation stayed intact and was very good, led by Kyle Freeland. And you think back to 2009, which I think many people who, like us, who follow the Rockies closely, believe that may have been the best all-around team they've ever had. I know my partner Ryan Spilborghs, believes that, and he certainly was a part of that. And that was led by a rotation that, until I think like the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, nobody missed a start. Marquis and Ubaldo and that group of guys, Aaron Cook was involved. They just kept rolling out, one start after another. And it's why the Dodgers go and do what they do and the Padres go and do what they do. And instead of just acquiring 5, they try to have 8 or 9 guys that are ready to go, because the reality is it's highly unlikely that 5 guys are going to make, 30 plus starts each. So you just, you keep your fingers crossed. Freeland. But when you hear shoulder strain, you know it's going to be a period of time, because they're going to have to get it quieted down. If there's no significant injury in there, they're going to have to be really, cautious with it. And then you have the build-up process again. So they're going to be without, my guess is, Kyle Freeland, for a period of time. And it's silly to speculate right now, because it literally, as you guys said, just happened within the hour. But this is not, he twisted his ankle running to first base. He's probably going to be fine. For precautionary reasons, we took him out. This is his throwing shoulder, and not what you wanted to hear.
I think what's particularly frustrating about Freeland getting banged up here today is that this was going to be a big year for him, big opportunity, because again, as you said, 2018, phenomenal. One of the best we've ever seen for a Rockies pitcher. 2019, he's shuttled down to AAA to kind of work things out. And then last year in a shortened season kind of shows that, he's maybe somewhere in the middle with potential to maybe get back to 2018. And now it seems like at least the start of the season could be derailed somewhat.
Yeah, it's frustrating. You hope for him personally that it's something quote unquote somewhat minor, and he's able to get back sooner rather than later. But he came out of a game on what's today, March 23rd. So there's no way he's starting on April 2nd against the Dodgers. I mean, you can pretty much scratch that off the list. And again, this on paper is the strength of the team. German Marquez, Kyle Freeland, Senzatella, Gomber's thrown the ball great, and and John Gray. And so we'll see where it goes. It's going to certainly open up an opportunity for that somebody in that next grouping, whether it's a Chichi Gonzalez who's thrown the ball fairly well this spring. Derek Rodriguez has not really thrown the ball, to be frank, great in his first spring training with the Rockies. Ryan Castellani, who made some starts last year, was sent to minor league camp about a week ago. He was having trouble throwing strikes, period. So there's not, a ton of candidates, to fill that spot, but we'll see how it falls out.
Yeah, the one name you did mention is probably the guy with the most highest upside in Ryan Rolison. What do you think the Rockies should do here? Do you just need to have someone who's consistent in there and just say, look, you do the best you can as the new number 5 starter, or should they say, you know what, let's give an opportunity to one of these younger guys and see if they can figure out, do they need the stability, or do they need the hope of an upside with one of the youngsters?
I believe this with young players, that I'm not as worried about the mental side. Sometimes you say, well, if you bring up a guy when he's too young or his development is not complete, that it could hurt him mentally when he fails. I think that if you can't handle failure in the game of baseball, then you will never be able to handle it. There have been a whole host of great players that have come up and gotten sent back down, come up again and gotten sent back down, and ultimately became, big time players. So if you're worried about that, then that player is probably not made of the right stuff. Now, I'm not saying that they're concerned about that with Ryan Rolison. From everything I hear, he is made of the right stuff. But if you feel it's close enough that he's going to throw strikes and that the stuff is big league, that yes, in a perfect world, you'd like to see some more refinement in Albuquerque, you may not have that luxury. But we'll see how they play it. They certainly can go with a more veteran guy in the former number 1, Chichi Gonzalez, who has started games for the Rockies, and go that route at least initially. But I also don't believe in wasting bullets personally at the minor league level if guys are close, because part of the development, we always say this, fellas, we always talk about, development and sometimes guys have to repeat at a lower level and they're working on X, Y, or Z. Well, part of your development to finish off whoever you're going to be is going to come at the big league level, right?
Right.
You're not a finished product when you arrive from AA or AAA. You now have to make the adjustment to playing against the best players in the world. So part of that development, maybe the most significant part of that development, actually occurs at the big league level.
Right. Yeah. I think for like these last years, we're going to have to find another best example of this, but my go-to was always Jake Arrieta, of the guy who, just could not get it completely together with Baltimore, right? Now, see, like I said, it's been a while now. We're going to have to go back, but it was Baltimore for so long, and becomes a free agent for the first time at 26, 27 years old. Chicago Cubs pick him up for relatively cheap, and then stuff starts to click. Maybe he's in the right situation. Maybe he's with the right pitching coach. Maybe just for him, whatever, all of the lessons from rookie ball and single A and double A and all the coaches over the year finally come together, and boom, the guy's one of the best pitchers in baseball for a 5-6 year stretch.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example. And so, the Rockies are going to have a decision to make. And I always say this: we're going to spend a lot of time, and you guys done this already, in that, what's the 26-man group that's going to break camp? Well, by the end of the week, it's going to be, there's going to be somebody else gets nicked and has to go out, and somebody else comes up, or, somebody made, already threw a bunch of innings, and so they're going to back off and they bring another guy out. There's going to be so many guys that are going to have to help out on any major league roster, whether you take the loaded, Dodgers or, any other club. So we'll see how the Rockies not only handle this initially, but how they handle it if it's a longer-term situation where they're without Kyle Freeland for, a significant period.
Yeah, Buddy always talks about, when he addresses the entire clubhouse at the beginning of spring training, that it's going to take every single person in there. Anyone who's invited to camp down in Scottsdale, I mean, they might get called on at some point. And to your point, Brendan Rodgers, we saw as a guy, he's on the opening day roster, pencil him in as the second base starter. He goes down with an injury. We're even getting a report of Jonathan Daza having a little collision in the outfield, came off the field. He's probably going to be okay. But yeah, you might write down who you want to see on opening day, those 26 guys, but not all 26 of those players are going to be healthy enough for you. That's why you need that depth. Yeah,
that's reality. That's sports. I really listen. There are times where organizations can say, boy, we just had bad luck this year, and let's say there was a year, we'll go way back. Take the Denver Broncos. This really didn't happen, but let's say Elway went down back in the day, and Terrell Davis went down, and Gary Zimmerman went down. You'd say, okay, there's a reason we're not winning football games if that were the case, right? Yeah. But to suggest that, injuries got us, every team's going to deal with injuries. So it is about what Patrick said. It's always going to be about your depth. And another sports coaches cliche that we often hear during these times, I understand what I'm about to say. You need to say that, but it's not entirely true. And that is next man up. We have a next man up mentality. Well, that's great. Peyton Manning went down. The next guy up ain't Peyton Manning. Yeah. Because if he was, he would have beat his ass out. Right. And when Kyle Freeland goes down, unfortunately, with all due respect to the other candidates, they're not Kyle Freeland yet. You hope. Listen, we all hope. I'm glad Drew brought up Ryan Rolison. You hope that Ryan Rolison one day's a guy, right? And he has the potential to be a guy. But right now, he ain't Kyle Freeland. And with all due respect to Chi-Chi, who I think we've seen him throw, some nice ball games and get through the lineup a couple of times. But, he's not Kyle Freeland. So, yes, it's next man up, but your depth is going to be tested, right out of the gate for the Rockies in the area that was the biggest strength.
It's funny. We saw Chi-Chi have a little bit of magic in 2019 against the Dodgers, coming in a late relief where he just was mowing down everybody. That's a 4-game series to open up the season. So, maybe you slot Chi-Chi in at the 4th spot there, the 4th man in the rotation, let Gomber go there on day number 5 to start the next series. But yeah, they're going to have to figure this out pretty quickly on the fly. Otherwise, there's those ramifications for the bullpen. if you don't have that consistency, right?
Yeah, and that long haul guy, I mean, that pushes somebody else into, potentially into that role. I think the way the Rockies were being set up, it was going to be Germán and should still be Germán on Thursday. It was going to be Freeland on Friday, and then Gray, Gomber, Senzatella. Remember, because Senzatella was a little bit later getting going with the hamstring. So he actually would throw out of the 5 slot initially just to give him a little bit more time. And now we'll see how that deck gets shuffled as to who pitches in the 2nd slot.
Well, as we've been talking about here, this is all about the Rockies depth and Rockies depth being tested. And so you may want to learn a little bit about the Rockies depth. And one of the ways to do that is to get on board with us here at DNVR Prospect Week. Patrick published something this morning about prospects. Help me with the numbers, because you didn't. It was 33 to. What did you do?
We can't do a top 30 list anymore, right? So here we are in Colorado.
Odd, so
it's got to be a top 33 list.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you need 15 honorable mentions to throw in there to say, hey, I see what you're doing out there, Ronaker, Palma, and these young guys, Willie McIver.
Right.
You can dream. You can dream on an Alan Trejo and say, hey, these guys could be something. So I want to give them a mention. So, yeah, we got a top 33 that we're working on this week for Prospect Week.
So if you're subscribed to the DNVR.com, you'll have access to all of that as we inch closer and closer to the top prospects. You're going to want to know all of these guys, though. Really fun to get in and learn about them. Not only will you get access to all that written stuff, if you subscribe annually right now, you get a free DNVR shirt from the Locker and a Recover Holistic stick from Holistic Wellness, 10 milligrams of CBD. This one focused on recovery. Check out the reviews. They are absolutely amazing. Really easy to use. Go to holisticwellness.com. That's HOLISTIK wellness.com. And better yet, you can use the promo code DNVR30 to get 30% off your first purchase. So head to the DNVR.com today to become a member of the family, and then head on over there to Holistic Wellness. Check out and see which CBD holistic stick you want. Those things are absolutely amazing. Also got to let you know, of course, about our friends over at Gabby Insurance. I'm not lying or joking with you folks when I tell you exactly my experience went like this. I went to Gabby.com/DNVR. That's GABI.com/DNVR. I spent 5, maybe 6 minutes putting in the information about my current car insurance. It gave me some options, and I found out I was going to be able to save $480 over the next year. Thanks to Gabby, I didn't have to pay anything. There was no obligation. I didn't have to switch right away. No emails, no text messages, none of that stuff. They just have left me alone since. They're like, here's your savings. Thanks for stopping by. See ya. Really, there's no obligation. There's no risk. There's no reason not to check it out. You're probably paying way too much for either your home or your car insurance. So I did GABI.com/DNVR and see how much you can save. For me, it's $480. For Eric Weedham, who apparently just wasn't insurance shopping at all, it was over $1,000 for the year. So, I mean, that's on him. Some of that's on him. Let's be honest. Gabby's a great company, but if they could save you that much, you're really overpaying for your insurance.
It's weird because it's like, does that mean he wins? If it turns out that if you use Gabby.com and you save $1,000, it seems like you win, but at the same time, it also is like an admittance of you've been losing up
till now, yeah.
Without Gabby.com.
Exactly right. So, Goody, as we mentioned there, it is Prospect Week here. Want to get your thoughts on a couple of these guys. One of the guys that I think is sort of grabbing the most amount of attention this spring is Colton Welker. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody who's been kind of following him a little bit. He was lighting it up last spring training, if you'll recall, which seems like 5 years ago at this point. But what has been your impression of him this spring? But also one of the few guys who's still a prospect you've actually seen through multiple spring trainings and who's really getting close now.
Yeah, he can hit. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind with Colton Welker. He can hit. He finds the barrel quite frequently. He's confident. He reminds me a little bit of, and you keep your fingers crossed because there's a long way to go for this guy to be the guy I'm going to mention, but a little bit of Garrett Atkins in that, he's not what you call like a great athlete or beautiful body guy type of thing, but he can hit. And so it'll be interesting to see, when he arrives, his development. And we've seen some young hitters emerge with the Rockies that just had that confidence from day one. I mean, Seth Smith's a guy that came up, and I think I dubbed him Mr. Late Night because he got so many big hits down the stretch. And it's usually the guy who's the last bat off the bench with the game on the line is the grizzled veteran like the Jason Giambi, right? But it became Seth Smith back in the day. And, Garrett Atkins, I think, quickly emerged as a guy who could just flat out hit. And I think Colton Welker could be that type of guy. And we'll see how this season plays out, and when there's a need, how quickly he gets a phone call.
It's funny, if you go back and look at his numbers from the last regular season of minor league baseball, it sounds crazy to think about 2019 being the most recent period that we had data. But his numbers were good in the Eastern League. He hit, I think, somewhere around like 270, something like that. Decent power numbers, again, nothing crazy. But if you actually compare it to a lot of guys that he had played against in the Eastern League, he was among the league leaders, because that's the one location for Rockies affiliates that just doesn't produce those crazy numbers. Like you see Brian Mundell when he hit 51 doubles, a few years ago in Asheville. And we know what AAA is like down there in Albuquerque. And so, yeah, Welker he's kind of quietly been doing that. And he was, a really good selection for them. I mean, people forget, I keep forgetting that he wasn't a second rounder. He was a 4th round pick out of high school.
Yeah, I mean, he's had 4 years of pro ball. Last year he was at the alternate site, and in 3 of the years he hit well over 300. And then the Eastern League, he got off to a really slow start, if I recall, that year in Hartford, and came on. But power develops over time. He's been a low double digit home run guy. I could see him, when he gets the opportunity to be an everyday guy, to be a 20 homer, 35 double type of player. And, I don't care where you play your games, that's pretty impressive. So again, I'm glad you started with him. This is a big year for a number of guys that are going to start at the big league level. It's also a big year for some guys that may start at the minor league level, the AAA level, or even at Hartford. And where they end up this year will be interesting to watch.
I really love the non-specificity of this comment from Caleb. Can you please let Drew know that he is the best in the biz, and even when the team is struggling, he makes it fun to listen to. A very relaxing voice. Thanks for all you do, Drew.
Well, so which one of us is he talking about? Which of the 3 of us? I'm confused because we share a lot of names here.
Yeah, Caleb is my cousin, actually, and I appreciate that. What was very nice of your staff was to read Caleb's comment on there, and not the other 37 that wanted to rip my head off. So.
Just another day in the life. Right.
I think they teach it down at the Cronkite School of Broadcasting to quote unquote shake the haters. That's I believe that's what they tell the kids these days.
Is that what they say at ASU?
Yeah. I like that. Shake the haters.
Yeah, I tell young people now that aspire to be in broadcasting or any form of journalism, because of social media, you better have a thick skin. I mean, you had to have a thick skin before, but you really better have a thick skin now. And I mean, you guys know this and doing what you do. You just you eliminate and not pay attention to some of the rhetoric out there.
I do want to get back into the prospect talk, but just since you brought that up, I'm really curious how you've seen that change sort of over the years. We've seen things like, I'll even bring up specifically like Ian Desmond basically getting off of Twitter because things, got pretty bad for him there for a while. There was a Broncos player the Avs backup goalie just recently. Miska was dealing with this situation too. So, there's been this interesting age that we're living in now where fans have kind of unprecedented access to players and media. And sometimes it's a great thing and sometimes it's really not.
I mean, it can be a really nice thing, and it's great when athletes, choose to interact with fans and do so, in a positive way and can have some fun with fans. We all know, for whatever reason, I know they're a minority, but it's easy to pay closer attention to the ones that take shots, and I don't know. It's really exposing maybe their own unhappiness, unfortunately. But when I can go, when I'm in a good mood right now, so I'm not gonna. But it can get me really ticked off, especially less so about myself, but more so about athletes or whatever. Because guess what? I tell the kids I coach this, that it takes great courage to go out there on the mound, on the field, to take an at bat at whatever level you're playing. 10-year-old little league game, 17-year-old junior, senior in a high school game. It takes great courage to go out there, because it doesn't matter what mom or dad or aunt or uncle or brother or sister or coach or whatever says, hey, this is what should happen, and do this and do that. Guess what? They ain't out there. And even for the folks that were out there at one time, you ain't out there anymore. You have no idea. And I always say this, when somebody, let's say a pitcher comes in and walks in the winning run, the last person on God's green earth that wanted to walk in the winning run was not you, Joe Fan, in your basement. It was the guy who was out there. You think he went out there and said, I want to suck today. I want to play like crap today. I want to punch out with the bases loaded with 2 outs in the ninth. But they have the courage to go up there and take that at bat. They have the courage to go on the mound. So it, as you can hear me, really infuriates me when people go there. And I know it's a minority. I know the vast majority of fans understand that and respect that, and I think demonstrate that on social media. But sometimes, the squeaky wheel is the one that we pay attention to, unfortunately.
I can remember an article that Rick Riley, CU Boulder alum, wrote probably 2 decades ago now at this point, talking about maybe one of the reasons why the rise of soccer and popularity happened to be the fact that you could kind of just get lost on the field and it was fine. Whereas in other sports like baseball, you need that courage to stand up there at the plate or on the mound and everyone is looking at you. If you're playing basketball, you get fouled, you're on the free throw line and everyone is looking at you. And you're absolutely right. You need a lot of courage just to play the game, and then to do it professionally, requires a completely different set of skills beyond that.
Yeah, and I hate when it's lost, and it's not to diminish, other sports. You mentioned soccer. If you're the left guard in football, maybe if you missed your block, it's not as, plain as day obvious. But certainly in the game of baseball, it is a team sport, but it's a series of confrontations between two people, right? Yeah. And you're there fully exposed when things don't go well. And
so one of the I love talking. One of my favorite conversations in all of sports, and I know you're very passionate about this as well, Goody, is about closers and what it really, like, the mentality. Why are relievers all such strange people? Well, it's this thing that we're talking about, right? It's like this. They're unique individuals. It takes an interesting and kind of cat to do that job, where the last 3 outs are on you. And this week on your podcast, again, the Drew Goodman podcast, you've got to be subscribed to that. You're listening to this on a podcast app right now. Just pause real quick. Make sure you're subscribed to the Drew Goodman podcast, because you don't want to miss an upcoming conversation with one of those people, Scott Oberg. We talk about one of the great memories in recent Rockies memory. People talk about Tony Wolters' single back up the middle. That was the decisive thing over the Cubs. And I feel like we never mention enough Scotty O striking out the final 4 Chicago Cubs to end that game. And the 4 is the most important thing. He didn't have to strike out the side after warming up and getting ready. He had to strike out the last guy of the previous inning, then sit there on the bench and watch Tony Wolters get that hit. And everybody's screaming and yelling and excited, but Scotty's got to sit there and get ready to get those final 3 outs. Because if he doesn't, Doesn't matter what Tony did.
Yeah, Drew, that's a great explanation and a rehash of what occurred. And thanks for the plug on the podcast. And Scott and I talk about that. And it's really interesting to hear him go back to that game that pushed the Rockies into the divisional series against Milwaukee. I also talked to him about, being a late inning guy and the culture of bullpens as a whole. And, I'm not going to go into grand detail. You'll listen to the podcast, but the Rockies almost have the typical bullpen that's full of, bearded guys and all kinds of characters and hard rock, heavy metal coming,
right,
leading from that place out beyond the outfield wall. They're kind of a bunch of clean shaven guys, and they're a close knit group, though. They are a close knit group, and you have a bunch of guys down there that have closed games. I mean, if you think about it, it's not just Bard and Oberg. Estevez, I know he's struggling this spring, but he's closed games. Jairo Diaz, I know he's struggling a little bit this spring. Also, Jairo's closed games. They have Michael Gibbons has closed games. So, they have a bunch of guys down there, but it's interesting. I think you'll find it fun to listen to Scott describe that group and describe the 8th and 9th inning, and also the game you mentioned, that great win in Chicago.
Do we know if they're still throwing a football around before games?
That was a Brian Shaw thing.
It was.
That was a Brian Shaw thing, and I know Shaw's trying to make his old club, the Cleveland Indians, right now. But Shaw always had that football tucked under his arm and brought it with him. I don't know if anybody has kind of got their own football and has incorporated that.
Maybe a Frisbee. We need someone to bring something unique out there because, yeah, you're right. Shaw was always the one. And maybe that kind of spoke to other guys maybe not necessarily buying in, because I never saw that football in anybody else's hand. Actually, now that I say that, I do remember seeing some B-roll footage from earlier in spring training, where you'll see the Rockies equipment bag and you see the players doing stretches. It was a football, and you saw the pitchers, doing their lunges and warming up. So it's there. We just haven't confirmed, who's picked up the football, who's the footballer in the group now.
Well, the first time I saw football involved in baseball workouts was Tom House. And Tom House, remains kind of a pitching guru. But Tom House, who's I don't know the story as to why he first incorporated that. Tom House was famous for catching the 715th home run of Henry Aaron off of Al Downing. He was in the bullpen and made the catch out there, and he had a really, solid big league career. But Tom House, when teaching pitching, used to incorporate throwing a football, and I believe he still does. But he was the first guy where I saw, the crossover, because it's a different, throwing motion. It's, it's up here, and your hand splays like this. I'm trying to get it on the screen when you're throwing the football, and baseball is here. So, but there has to be something there that is beneficial in the throwing motion or the strengthening of the shoulder or whatever, as to why more folks have incorporated that now.
If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel and joining us for these lives, by the way, you missed the pick perfect form. I have no notes, no coaching notes on Drew Goodman's football and baseball. I have no notes.
No, one of the things that Tom Brady talks about is creating a C when your elbow's up when you're throwing the football, and having a C, a reverse C, to make sure mechanically that he's throwing. His throwing motion is pure.
His seems pretty good.
He seems to hit the target more frequently than a lot of guys I've watched through the years. And he seems to get to play in more games in January and ultimately in early February than other guys I've seen. But that's just me.
Pinpoint analysis.
I'm not always the most observant, Patrick.
Since we're going down the rabbit hole a little bit, and again, you've been around as a coach and you've been on the backfields, what has been one of the more weirder pieces of equipment that you've seen an athlete use to work out, whether it's baseball or any sport where it just was very unorthodox?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's so funny because I've never seen this, but I don't know why the hula hoop jumped into my mind, but I've never seen that incorporated. I will tell you this. We had this product that I was involved with, oh man, it's probably 10, 12 years ago, that you still see around a little bit. It's called the hitting jacket. And I wish I had one sitting here in my office. But I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there were different weights, kind of like donuts. But what was different is you could use it truly to train because it would only slide up the bat to around the label. So the full barrel is still exposed. So you could take BP with it. You could do, front toss and flips with it. And, it would help with, hand and wrist strength, et cetera. And you still see them a little bit at the big league level. But Ryan Howard, I've seen this only with a couple of guys, but Ryan Howard, most notably, his first round of batting practice, he had the old-fashioned donut, right, that we all had when we grew up, right?
Yeah.
And so it's on the end of the bat, and it's on the barrel, and he'd be taking hacks with it, and sometimes the ball would hit the donut and it would spray, left or right in the cage. But he always took his first round with the old donut on it. Now I know that's a baseball, object training tool, but to utilize it in that manner, usually guys just swing it a few times, to get loose, swinging around their head a little bit, couple of cuts, and then they shake it off and they take dry hacks. But that was a little different.
You'll remember Dave Parker using the sledgehammer when he was on the on-deck circle. And I don't know if a couple guys have done that since then. I'm not exactly sure. That would be. They
got the heavy pipe now. I haven't seen a sledgehammer in forever, right? Dave Parker was big enough to pick up like the side of the building and swing it.
I'm noticing a theme with the Ryan Howard and Dave Parker.
Yeah. So I haven't seen the sledgehammer. You see the heavy, pipe, for lack of a better way of describing it, that's in on-deck circles at various levels. Do you guys remember the old fan that it had four sides that you put on the end of the bat, and when you swung it, because of the wind resistance, it was hitting like this fan, and so it would accomplish the same thing. And then when you take it off, the bat feels much lighter. It's a psychological thing. But I haven't seen one of those fans in years, but you used to see it 30, 40 years ago for a short period of time.
Yeah, I played ball with a guy whose dad was, this is long before Shark Tank, where he had some item where it was, 3/4 of a wooden bat, and he duct taped a baseball around it. And the idea was, to get the baseball in front of the bat. It was a whole thing. It never, he wasn't able to pitch it to Mark Cuban, but I do remember the fan thing on the bat. It looks like one of those hats people wear at the beach, where it looks like the top of a circus tent almost. That's what it reminded me of when it was on the barrel of a bat.
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of, different products, if you will, that, have proper intent, but don't necessarily catch on. But I remember there was one thing. It's probably still on the market somewhere. It looked like the size of a golf ball almost, but it had all different sides on it. It wasn't round. And so you'd kind of roll it to somebody who was now being an infielder, and to get that guy to keep his hands out front and find where that hop was going to come, because it was jumping around. So I'm guilty of purchasing that many, many years.
That's why you remember it.
Yeah.
You're getting into the details there. No, I like that.
If Ron Washington uses it, it's a good product. I could see him using that.
Wash is a good instructor, man. He works hard with infield guys. That's a guy. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to have him on a podcast or do an interview with him. Ron Washington is a fun guy, and he's a baseball guy through and through.
Yeah, that would be quite a treat. One thing I do know is if you want someone that you can rely on for your mortgage as much as you can rely on Ron Washington for fantastic baseball conversation, you got to check out our friends at DNVRmortgage.com. Chevalier, Mike and Virginia Chevalier. Chevalier is French for protectors of the realm. Let them protect your realm, your castle, your home, whether you got to refinance, get a loan, maybe you're looking to buy a new place, check out the market right now. You need a free consultation, and you can get that by going to DNVRmortgage.com. You enter to win a free shirt or hat of your choice, and most importantly, you get set up with that free consultation to discuss all of your options. Mike and Virginia absolutely are the best in the biz, and better than that, they're huge Colorado sports fans, so they can chat with you about your favorite hobby while they're also helping you out with this important aspect of your life, whatever it may be. So call Virginia directly at 303-257-6578 or Mike directly at 970-412-2472. And again, you can visit DNVRmortgage.com for a chance to win a free hat or shirt and a free consultation. Michael Chevalier, NMLS number 1931006. Virginia Chevalier, NMLS number 1910631. Got to get the right numbers on there. That wouldn't be good. And then the other one we got here today is, of course, Draftkings, the best sportsbook app you're going to find anywhere out there. The tournament's still going on. Time to do all kinds of March Madness, or if college basketball isn't your thing, baseball season's right around the corner. Time to get in on all those before the season bets. If you feel like you know how the season's going to go, how individual players are going to be doing, you got to get on there. And I'll tell you what, we were talking about it earlier, Goody. People are very confident on the social media. We see it all the time. They're coming to us and telling us exactly what's going to happen this upcoming season. And as they used to say, put your money where your mouth is. You're so sure, put a couple of bucks on it at DraftKings Sportsbook, and then we'll have a paper record. We can all look back on it, and if you're doing really well, then you should be up. If not, you're at least having fun. Either way, really, really fantastic stuff all the time in all the different sports at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, if you're a new user, you download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app and you use promo code DNVR when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 if the college basketball team of your choosing pulls off the win. That's right. Code DNVR turns $1 into $100 for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
Goody, while we've got you talking about DraftKings Sportsbook, your bracket busted, or is it still looking good?
Come on, Patrick. Whose bracket's not busted? Unless hold on one second though. Who is my oh man, it's one of my all-time favorite shows, Cheers. And do you remember what was her name? Oh boy.
Shelley Long. I do this game with
Long. No, it was Shelley Long.
I do this with Creasman all the time.
Yeah.
I never miss.
Good, you're right.
Cheers. Yep. Shelley Long. Got it. Okay.
Right. Shelley Long. So do you remember when Shelley Long was winning the NFL pool every week? And they're like, how'd she do? What was her name of her character again?
Oh, I'm trying to remember on the show.
Joanne.
Okay. No,
I don't.
So,
Diane.
So remember
Diane.
Yeah, Patrick, you're nailing stuff. So anyhow, she's winning it every week. And they ask her, what are you doing? She goes, it's obvious a bear would beat a dolphin.
Yeah.
So she was, that's how she was choosing. So I don't even know how this is played out, but anybody who's doing really well in the old, March Madness has had to just throw something against the wall, because if you tried to use any sort of logic, your bracket is like mine, bupkis.
Or you have 27 different entries. And you're like, hey, I picked Oral Roberts. And you're like, yeah, on one of those 27.
Right. Yeah. It may be more than that. It may be like 127. So I tweeted out the other night after round one, this is no longer possible. I said, I don't know what, it's kind of obvious now. Let's just go to that final Monday in the championship game. It's going to be Abilene Christian and North Texas, right? I've
been all over, not Oral Roberts. I've been all over Oral Roberts. No,
well, yeah. You look like a genius now.
Man. I did have Syracuse going pretty far, and that Syracuse actually is my DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week. Right now, they're getting 5.5 against Houston, and I had Houston, winning their region, but I just think Syracuse has played so well. I love the story of Jim Boeheim. You know him too, coming from the East Coast, and to see his son, Buddy Boeheim, as the star of that team. I just love that. So that's a great story, even though, we don't see Houston really go this far. But still, I got to say, my DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week, Syracuse right now getting 5.5 against Houston coming up this Saturday.
I will second that, and I will tell you that I always pulled hard for Syracuse. My sister went there. They dropped their baseball program, so that was not an option, for me. But they had a great, and still do, a great communication school in the Newhouse School of Communications, and so many broadcasters have come out of there. So I've always pulled for Syracuse, and in this year's tournament, Syracuse kind of just got into the tournament. But they're getting better and better. They play that 2-3 zone, and Buddy Boeheim shoots the lights out. They've been fun to watch, and I'm with you, man. They've already made a nice run, and I would not be surprised to see them keep going.
So Creasman, in your opinion, what is a tougher sounding mascot? Would you rather be an Orangeman or a Gale?
Yeah, answer
carefully.
I think at some point it was explained to me, but I remember when I was a kid, I was like, an Orangeman? A gale is like a slightly strong gust of wind? Is that what are we doing?
Someone who speaks Gaelic.
You can tell
that
I
actually sounds probably a little bit better.
Closely. Yeah.
Good. You care to chime in? Gale. It's a Gale, right?
Gale Force wins. Yeah. I don't know.
There you go.
Iona Gales.
I like that strategy.
Gales. Hey, listen, Iona Gales gave Alabama, with Pitino, gave them all they wanted for about 35 minutes.
All right, to kill two birds with one stone here, get us back toward prospects a little bit and answer a question from the comments here on YouTube coming in from Liam. Is Ben Bowden going to be a player on the 26-man roster this year? Where does he fall in the system? And Goody, just your general thoughts on the lefty who's looking to make that debut.
Well, the Rockies went by and large without a lefty last year. I mean, Pazos was involved and Deal was involved for a bit. Deal's already been sent to Albuquerque as of a few days ago. It's coming down to Lucas Gilbreth, who's a good story. He's a Colorado kid. Finished his college career at the University of Minnesota, historic program. And he's really, with the exception of one outing, he's thrown the ball very well. I think he has 12 punch outs going into this afternoon in 6 2/3. And Ben Bowden, who the question, was about, and Ben Bowden's a former, second round pick out of a historically good program as well in Vanderbilt, or more recently his, very good program. So I would think that, especially in the case of Bowden, because the question was specific to him, whether it's initially or at some point in time, Ben Bowden will make his major league debut this year. And he's been good this spring.
Yeah, he has. I think there might even be room for him on the roster now with Tyler Kinley kind of coming down. I think he might have had a hamstring injury, so I'm not sure if he officially was put on the IL. But if so, I mean, I think that opens up the slot with Gilbreth. Again, great story. Has yet to pitch higher than high A. He was at Lancaster as a starting pitcher. But again, we know a lot of guys have that story where they haven't played above A ball. Well, they would have played at Double A last year and would have been ticketed for Triple A this year. So it's not the same large leap that it would be in a normal season.
No, and you keep coming back to the same thing. A lot of guys are going to get opportunities, and the Rockies will be a better club the more folks that have been afforded these opportunities produce positive results naturally and become less of, prospect/suspect to, legit guy. And hopefully Ben Bowden is a good story this year as we, revisit it at some point during the summer.
There's another great one. Who's the most underrated prospect in the system right now? Or just one you would choose to highlight?
That's an interesting one. That's a really interesting one. especially given the fact that we have nothing to go by, as Patrick was mentioning
right.
ago. So you can say, hey, is this guy, in Hartford that flew beneath the radar, or maybe in the Cal League that flew beneath the radar. I mean, a guy, I don't think you could say this right now because he got a little bit of press earlier, was Helcris Olivares, who's a 20-year-old kid, lanky left-hander who throws in the mid to upper 90s. He definitely, we were talking about development earlier. You could see, I saw him pitch live, and, he's still working on repeating his delivery, and it's a more complex delivery, but you can see the arm. There's a guy that I mentioned, I think, on my podcast. Patrick, you'll double check me because you remember everything. Did I mention this kid, Perez, last week on my podcast? I said a name for the future, and I mean really down the road, because he's 17. He just turned 17. He has not even thrown a pitch yet in the Dominican Summer League, but he was signed, and he's a right-handed kid with a big arm already, 95 plus. Really can spin it already, and composure and presence on the mound that I know, in talking to folks who work out of Latin America, they're really excited about this kid. And again, this is way down. This isn't like, oh, he's going to be in the big leagues in a year or two. This is down the road, but it's Brian Perez. It's a name to remember.
And that is a very good underrated name, because before you had mentioned it, I hadn't heard it.
So I was going to say.
And it's all relative too, you think too, about like being underrated. Whereas I've been a big Alan Trejo fan for a couple of years. And while, the guy might not be the next Trevor Story, he can be a very valuable piece on any number of teams and can pick it at shortstop. The bat still has a little way to go, but he's a guy that quite literally you will never see on a top 30 list. And I have yet to see on a top 30 list, but he's got a big league glove where he could carve out a nice career for himself. Yeah,
I'm going to one other thing, by the way, the kid I was mentioning, Perez, he's related to Edinson Volquez. So, and we know that Volquez has been a really good major league pitcher. That doesn't necessarily make it, seamless, but I'm excited about what I've heard about that kid. But I want to mention another guy that was part of the draft class last year out of the University of Miami that I know a lot of scouts are high on. You know where I'm going with this, and that's Chris McMahon.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be really curious to see how he progresses this summer, wherever his first stop is. I mean, he was a college pitcher at Miami a year ago. So that's a name to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, that was such a phenomenal draft class last year. For the 2020 draft. And, on one hand, we had a big, draft coverage. I think you joined us as well for that. We had a million guests on, but, we were like, all right, you got to get one of these pitchers here with the 9th overall pick. Then Zach Veen falls to him. You go, okay, you can't pass that up. And then sure enough, you were still able to get, front of the rotation, or at least mid-rotation starter in Chris McMahon at the start of the second round. And that was quite the steal, I thought, by the Rockies.
Yeah, on paper, I think Billy Schmidt and his guys, Danny Montgomery really had a good draft, and we'll see how it's borne out down the road. We never know. I think one of the fascinating exercises that I know you guys have done, and it's fun to do for people that really follow baseball, is to look back at different draft classes, especially the top ones, and you'll be amazed how, not you guys, but folks will be amazed how frequently first round picks don't make it. And you'll look back, all right, let's look at the 2010 first round, draft. And you go, wait a second, I've never heard of that guy. I've never heard of that guy. I mean, we work in the game, and we'll see names from 7, 8, 9 years ago in the first round. You'll go, I've never heard of that guy.
Yeah.
They never made it.
Yeah. It's
wild.
That
happens a lot more, I think, than people realize. Or even if you have fun and you say, hey, let's do a redraft of the first round, from 2010 or something like that. And by the time you even get to number 20 or 25, you're like, not really that excited about these guys. Like, this guy was, he's like a number 3, number 4, outfielder. He's not that great, but he was the 20th best of the first round that year. It's hard to be successful, in the draft. It's a crapshoot in a lot of ways.
Especially because you're deciding, do you take a 17-year-old high school kid? Do you take the 3-year college kid? Do you take a kid after his first year at junior college? You have 24 teams passed on Mike Trout out of New Jersey. Have you heard of Jersey, by the way, Patrick? You know anything?
No.
It's Mike Trout that I'm drawing a blank on. His name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I'll give you my guy real quick because I've talked about him plenty of times, just because I was reading an excellent article today on the DNVR.com. You should become a member. It's really good stuff.
Who wrote
by
that?
Somebody named Patrick Lyons. Actually. I was going to say, as much as it might sound like I was busting myself up there, going over Lucas Gilbreth, good stuff. But one of the things I saw as an honorable mention, because we did kind of conglomerate a bunch of different prospect ranking systems. Dom Nunez not even being able to make the list as a guy. Now he's already made his major league debut. Maybe people don't really think of him as a prospect. He's never been one of those top guys. This is somebody I've paid especially close attention to his career because I just happened to make a connection with him when he was like 17 when I went out and visited him in Grand Junction. He's just a really smart, really good kid. He's got a wonderful family. Like, they're just incredible people, and he's been in the organization for like 7 or 8 years, and he's still considered a rookie. He's gone the long route to get there, and I just like everything about his game. Like, he takes every element of the game seriously and tries to get better every day, and you got to root for people like that.
Well, Drew, to pick up your thought on Dom, 2 of the best offensive players throughout spring training this year have been the 2 catchers, Elias Diaz and Dom Nunez. Yeah. They've both hit, I haven't checked today, but I think they were both hitting over 400 basically for the spring. And we all hope that there's carryover into the regular season and the Rockies can get, really solid production offensively, and as well as handling the pitching staff from the combination of Diaz and Nunez.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of thump behind the plate this year. That's going to be exciting to see, especially down at the bottom of the lineup. That's definitely going to help, just extend the lineup a lot. And again, there's going to be a lot of swing and miss in there with those 2 guys, but we're going to see the balls get launched out of Coors Field a lot more this year with the Rockies duo behind the plate.
Let's go. One more question here from Scott. Thoughts on CJ Crone? He's smacking the baseball around.
Well, when you ask, is he for real? I mean, he's for real in that, I know this will be, I think, his 5th team in the last 5 seasons. And you say, well, why is he a journeyman? I mean, he has the ability to hit the ball over the wall, and he's for real because he's done it before. Not we project him to be a guy that can hit it over the wall. He's hit 30 home runs in a season. He's hit in the high 20s in home runs in a season. And so what he has done this spring, which has been positive, he's hit a few home runs and impacted the baseball. I would expect him to do that during the regular season because he's done it before, and it's not like he's 38 years of age. So CJ Crone, is for real when in that he's going to be a guy that's going to hit when he's in the lineup in the middle of the order. And I think if he gets enough at bats, he can be a 25 home run guy and, hit 260, 270, hopefully with, a little bit of a boost average wise from playing at 20th and Blake.
I mean, he's almost exactly Mark Reynolds. You think about where, again, basically was almost a non-roster invite for 2 consecutive years, had to play his way onto the field, and you go, yeah, that's a damn good first baseman you got over there. And I think that's what CJ Crone is going to be for them this year, really holding down the fort, doing a nice job driving in runs, protecting Charlie in the lineup there with his right-handed bat. I think he was a really, really shrewd pickup by the front office this year. That was nice. Yeah,
and he's I think he's adequate at first. I mean, people forget Mark Reynolds, pretty good first baseman. Mark, he was a left side guy at Virginia. I think he was actually a shortstop initially at the University of Virginia and a third baseman when he came up with Arizona. I mean, he picked the ball really well over at first base. But Crone's going to help the Rockies.
Yeah, well, obviously, we'll have updates for you on Freeland when we get them. That's tough news today, but like we said, a lot of other people here to talk about, and it was going to be a season, I think, either way. Go to a lot of these guys, finding out what these guys have, and we're continuing to add to that. These are the players who we're gonna, the Lucas Gilbreths and the Ben Bowdens, once they make their debut, we're gonna find out, what they've got. Colton Welker, I think, likely to make his major league debut this year. One guy we didn't get around to talking about, Ryan Vilades, had a great spring as well. He could be right around the corner. I don't know that he's quite as close, but like I keep saying, no minor league baseball last year, so we really don't know what some of these guys exactly where they're at. But a lot to watch in this last week of spring training and heading toward opening day. Yeah,
there's still plenty to watch in the stretch run, and I know collectively everybody's fingers are crossed that the Rockies avoid a bad situation with Kyle Freeland, and it's something that they just got to get quieted down, and it's not a real lengthy thing, but we'll find out in the coming 24 to 48 hours, I'm sure.
So stay tuned for all that to make sure that you're not missing anything. You got to follow everybody on social media at Drew Creasman, at Patrick D. Lyons, at Drew Goodman 42, and at DNVR_Rockies. Of course, you got to subscribe to the DNVR.com to get all the stuff we talked about earlier, plus discounts on hats and shirts and masks, bigger beer when you come down to the DNVR bar, all the stuff for Prospect Week. And you got to subscribe to the Drew Goodman podcast on whatever app you're using. Don't forget to do that. You got to listen to the Scott Oberg interview coming up. Go back and listen to the Jenny Kavnar stuff. It's really can't miss fun conversations for Colorado Rockies fans. You really got to get that as part of your regular listening. So, of course, we always appreciate it when Goody can swing by and just chat a little baseball with us before too long. It's going to be live baseball. They're going to start counting, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to the season, and we'll sneak one in hopefully next week before opening day, and then we'll get creative. I think it'll be fun because when I get together with you guys, we'll actually talk about games that count and things that have transpired that we can really dig into. So that'll be a lot of fun.
All right. 9 days away from opening day. They're just around the corner.
Go.
So stay tuned for all that stuff. We're going to have countdowns, big celebration of the return of baseball, and really just the return of life in many ways. So thank you all for hanging out with us, continuing to be absolutely awesome out there. I promise you, we will continue to be absolutely Patrick Lyons and the Drews Goodman and Creasman in here. And until next time, we will see you at the ballpark.